Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, on behalf of President Claude Barthelon, I'm glad to welcome you here tonight for this new edition of the debating tournament. It has become a tradition that this final of the debating tournament should take place here. The first edition in this Galerie des Fêtes was in 2007 due to the fact that works were being done in Salle Victor Hugo, which previously hosted this event. Of course, a room named after Victor Hugo wasn't a bad place for a debating tournament, but it was situated in a new building which doesn't have the same history as Palais Bourbon and Hôtel de la Sée. The Galerie des Fêtes, where we are, was built in the 19th century to connect Palais Bourbon, the seat of the National Assembly, with Hôtel de la Sée, which is the residence of the President of the National Assembly, but also the place where he and his staff work and the place where he received foreign visitors. We didn't have the chance to receive the Queen of England, who sadly visited the Senate for the 100th anniversary of the Entente Cordiale, but the day after tomorrow, we will receive, the National Assembly will receive the King of Spain, and he will be passing through this very gallery on his way to the house, to the chamber, where he will deliver a speech. As a matter of fact, every day during parliamentary session, the President leaves the Cabinet du Départ, which is the room just behind, and goes through this gallery between the Guard of Honor at the sound of drums to go and preside the sitting in the hemicycle. A very impressive and nevertheless Republican ceremony, since it symbolizes the allegiance of the armed force to the civil power. So we are in a very parliamentarian place, and it seems appropriate to host a debating tournament that takes after the debates in the House of Commons. That is why we have once again the great honor of having the ambassador of the United Kingdom to preside the jury tonight, but I won't say more about the jury, leaving this privilege to Declan McKenna. I shall only say that I have myself a long relationship with this event. I believe I've been a member of the jury for almost 10 years. This is due, of course, to my strong and lasting friendship with Declan, who is my English teacher. So, by the way, if I have made too many mistakes in this brief speech, you know whom to criticize. Though Declan strongly insisted that I shouldn't say a word about the topic of your debate, I would like to say that I find it rather ironic that you should debate about the House keeping calm. I imagine some of you have already attended a public sitting of the National Assembly, or at least watched it on TV, so I'm sure you'll understand why I'm very much longing to hear your arguments in favor or against the fact that the House would keep calm and carry on. And I will relay your ideas on this matter to the President, who will certainly be most interested. May the best team win.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an extraordinary year. The French Debating Association is celebrating its 22nd annual debating tournament and its 21st year running here at the National Assembly. We're doing it in style. For the 8th year in succession, as the Secretary General said, we are here in this most magnificent, extraordinary cradle of democracy, the Hôtel de la Sée. Our presence here is due to the current resident of this sumptuous building, to a man who immediately replied and positively replied to our request for a venue for our final, to a man who is the representative of the openness and the transparency of this forum for all citizens that is the National Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the FDA and of you all here present this evening, I would like to thank in the warmest of fashions the Président de l'Assemblée nationale, Mr. Claude Barthelone, for granting us the opportunity to avail of this magnificent arena for our feast of rhetoric. Silence is the attribute of idiots, says Cicero, and the only silence that we welcome here is that of the mobile telephone variety. We certainly neither welcome nor expect silence from the 10 orators who are gathered on either side of me to do rhetorical battle this evening. The two teams present this evening have each won through 3 qualifying rounds to get to this final. And so the winner will truly be the FDA champion of 2015. We are absolutely welcome and delighted to welcome on the government side this evening, fresh from their semi-final victory over UNS Ulm in a wonderful debate held at the British Council. Please welcome the proposition team and former winners of our coveted trophy from Paris 2, Panthéon-Assas. I will ask them to stand up in order of appearance, which is slightly different from the order you have on your brochures, very slightly different. So the Prime Minister will be Mr. Julien Berger. Second speaker, Mr. Pierre Brunstein. Third speaker, Ms. Rita Lorabi. Fourth speaker, Ms. Charlotte Matthews. And the final speaker on the government side will be Mr. Carlo von Hanstein. In our other semi-final, newcomers Supélec came up against a team from another former winner of our trophy, and who are this evening's opposition, the École Polytechnique. Leader of the opposition, or shadow prime minister, as we like to refer to him, Mr. Guillaume Dubrulle. Second speaker, Ms. Flora Wursch. Third speaker, Mr. Grégoire Béraud. Fourth speaker, Ms. Aude Durand. And the final speaker for the opposition, and indeed the final official speaker of the debate, Mr. Christophe Zang. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please spare a thought for the people who will have probably the most difficult decision. The members of the jury who will choose the winning team and the best speaker. The very distinguished members of the jury. In the past, we've had star-studded juries, it's true. But this group of talented individuals is the most star-studdedest jury we have ever had to grace our final. Each of them comes from a different field of competence, be it the domain of politics, diplomacy, administration, the arts, the media, or indeed academia. But each is distinguished by his or her excellence in that field. First of all, the president of the jury. I'm sure I'm not giving away any secrets if I tell you that his involvement with the French Debating Association goes back to the last century. At that time, he was Counselor for European Economic and Financial Affairs at the British Embassy here in Paris, and was instrumental in persuading the then ambassador, Sir Michael Jay, to support our association. To grace us with his presence this evening, he's not just content to do that, but he went so far as to invite the French Debating Association, 200 of us, to his residence for one of our 2 semi-finals. For all those reasons, ladies and gentlemen, the FDA is deeply indebted to the British ambassador here in France. And so please give him the warmest of welcomes, His Excellency Sir Peter Ricketts. The second member of the jury mentioned on your brochure unfortunately fell ill this afternoon, so the first secretary from the Irish Embassy. I suspect it may have something to do with celebrating the Six Nations victory over the weekend. But please don't tell him I said that. But ladies and gentlemen, we are here in the Galerie des Fêtes at the Hôtel de Lassay. And you are certainly aware that just behind me stand the doors which open to the Palais Bourbon and to the chamber where decisions are taken on every daily basis, which have a direct effect on how this country is governed. This well-oiled machine, which allows the legislative process to take place, which allows that process to actually happen and to be carried out, has an extremely long and glorious history. And we are particularly pleased to welcome this evening the person who is at the very heart of the functioning of this mechanism. You have already heard that she is an outstanding polyglot, but she is also, as you have understood, one of the greatest supporters of the French Debating Association. And she also proves that we stand in terms of diversity, exchange, and openness. Secretary General of the Presidency of the National Assembly, Ms. Corinne Lukiens. The National Assembly is indeed very well represented on our jury this evening because the next member of this illustrious panel is the person who carries out the functions of the Directrice du Service des Affaires Internationales. She too is a long-standing friend of the FDA and perfectly conveys the image of modern France in our tumultuous, ever-changing world. Madame Françoise Meffre. Debating is indeed an art, and no jury for our final would be complete without an artist. But ladies and gentlemen, our next jury member is not just any artist. Born in Calgary, Anglophone Canada, and yet a distinguished author in French, she is the living example of what our association most cherishes, the notion of cultural exchange. She is the winner of numerous literary prizes, but tonight she graces us with her presence on the jury to add that special touch. Ms. Nancy Houston. Our next jury member is an extremely distinguished professor, academic, researcher, and scientist. He is Director of Research at the CNRS for the group of macromolecular complexes and Deputy Director of the Institut d'Alembert. His main research interests are the transcription and control of gene expression, as well as the kinetic and dynamic analysis of nuclear protein complexes, biosensors, and biochips. Have I got that right, Malcolm? Yes. He carried out his postdoctoral research at CR1 CNRS from 1988, then DR2 CNRS. in Professor Henry Book's laboratory working on the regulation of gene expressions, and more specifically, the kinetics of promoter recognition by RNA polymerases in pancreatics. He also happened to be the first ever bellboy at an FDA final. That was 1993, and we were both in short trousers at the time, I believe. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Dr. Malcolm Buckle. The final member of the jury has a very special position. She was, and since we live in France, therefore still is, the Secretary General of the FDA, because one keeps one title, doesn't one, in this great republic? She held this position for 2 years running, in 2009 and 2010, and added her own inimitable touch to help make the FDA what it is today. We are delighted to welcome her back this evening to occupy a position she most thoroughly deserves as member of our jury for this evening's final, Ms. Vanessa Duchâtel. In these days of globalization, the FDA has had to adapt itself to new requirements and the demands, and thus we have opened up branches dealing with every imaginable aspect of debating. But I would like to take this opportunity to say a very special thanks to two very important people, the real VIPs of this evening's debate. The two people without whom none of us would be present this evening. They will be our co-timekeepers. As the FDA expands and as our needs increase, it is more and more the case that we call upon exceptional people to deal with exceptional circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, most of you here have little idea of the labor, the stress, the toil that goes into making an event like this evening happen. The students, judges, teams, and coaches here this evening have an inkling of the work behind the scenes that allows our tournament to be what it is. And thus, I have no doubt whatsoever that you will join me in giving a special round of applause to our co-sec-gens for the hours, for the days, for the months that they have devoted to this tournament and to its success. Ms. Alice Cook and Mr. Al-Assad. And so it is with great pleasure that I present them with the memento of this evening's debate, but also of this whole tournament, the official medal of the French National Assembly. It is indeed fitting that this feast of eloquence should take place in France's cradle of oratory, the National Assembly. But it is even more the case given that the spectacle of rhetoric you're about to witness is based on the rules and procedures of the Assemblée's sister house in the United Kingdom, the House of Commons. So for those of you unfamiliar with our format, let me just briefly run through the main features of what has now become known in Brownian terms as the Paris 5 style of debating. 5 speakers from the government, 5 from the opposition, speak consecutively for a total of 6 minutes each. Speakers may be interrupted in 2 ways. Points of information. A question made to a speaker speaking by a member only of the opposing team. The speaker may or may not accept the point, but is obliged to accept at least one and expected to accept 2 during his or her speech. If a speaker prefers to reject a point of information, then it must be made clear, either verbally or with a very clear gesture, that that point of information is being rejected. The second interruption is a point of order. It's made to the chairman, to myself, who must accept the point of order, and the order concerns the running or the procedure of the debate. Points of order are not included in the timing of the debate, unlike points of information which are included in the timing. Timing is very simple. There are 2 periods of protected time. Of a 6-minute speech, at the end of the first minute, we will hear the following noise. That means that the speaker has reached the end of 60 seconds and may be interrupted. During the next 4 minutes, the speaker can be interrupted by points of information. At the end of a 5th minute, we will hear the following noise. That means 2 things. The speaker can no longer be interrupted by points of information and has, of course, 60 seconds to reach his or her conclusion. If they do reach the 6-minute bell, then we will hear this noise. And that means that the conclusion must come about as rapidly as possible. And after 6 minutes 30, we will hear the following noise, which is pretty clear what it means, I think. So, ladies and gentlemen, the jury will then be asked to retire to consider its verdict. There are 4 equal criteria for the jury. The first is content, argumentation. The second is presentation and the ability to put one's message across. The third is teamwork, strategy, interruptions. And the fourth is overall impression, or as we like to say in the FDA, the je ne sais quoi. During this time, debating is not just a sport to be watched, it's also a spectator and participatory sport. So we expect you, the members of the House, to show your approbation, thank you, or your disagreement, and you're more than welcome and you're encouraged to participate in that particular fashion. All this talk is very well, but as the Irish philosopher Kevin Valnier once said, words are also actions, and actions are a kind of words. You, ladies and gentlemen, have come for action. And so we open the arena to our oratorical gladiators. Let us move to the motion at hand. This House would keep calm and carry on.